when the bottom comes, that would be the buy of a lifetime. So I truly do believe that. I believe that all these assets and this technology is viable. I just think that it's a bubble right now. We're a little bit too early.
Welcome to the second episode of NFT Tactics. This week we'll be reviewing our standard segments, including our market weekly rundown, mints of the week, any news from the space, some winners and losers, as well as our personal weekly rundowns of plays we may have made or things that we're looking at. We've also got a very special guest this week. Garrett from GFNF, the G in GFNF, joins us for the second half of this podcast for an interesting interview where he gets to share his perspective on navigating a bear market. So Adam, how was the week for you?
It's been an interesting week for sure. We had a nice little holiday weekend. Things certainly did not slow down in the Solana space.
Well,
we did certainly see some new trends come about. It's crazy. This hype brand mint meta, it seems like it's dead already. After GCAN Studios, it went pretty poorly, and now everyone's like kind of against the idea of it.
Yeah.
And some other stuff that we'll get into a little bit further in the show. But yeah, I mean, after that, it felt like utility-based NFTs had a quick little comeback for about 48 hours, and then right back to degen season. We had a project called Ghost Kid DAO kind of kick that off. It's this pixel artwork with a really, really solid community. They're not necessarily a degen play on their own when I say that. What I mean by that is these super cheap pixelated art that cost pennies to the dollar in comparison will mint out and have these crazy communities back them, and they'll wind up going, I think we had one over the weekend that went almost 20x.
Totally.
So weird place for sure. Moving fast as always, and we just got to be ready to adapt.
Absolutely. Shifting things over from the mint and flip season, maybe it's less about the hype now and more about seeking out those truly good projects. I know your big thing is looking for value in places where other people aren't.
Yeah, for sure. It's definitely on a case-by-case basis, I think, but a lot of these big upcoming ones that we have sort of at the end of this week, beginning of next week, have drastically changed in narrative from even a week ago on our last show.
Totally.
And it'll be interesting to take a closer look at those.
Absolutely. And on the ETH side of the house, I would argue the degen season is here to stay as well. We've seen Goblintown capture almost all of the volume for the ETH side of the house. It's done roughly 21,000 Ethereum traded in volume since its launch, I believe just last week. The floor price is currently 7.8 ETH, which is absolutely unbelievable. We've been watching this all day because we truthfully have had a hard time like watching it and imagining it going even higher because this is a project with no roadmap, no Discord, no Instagram, and they made that perfectly clear. However, they did tweet out about an airdrop coming this Friday. If you can make out those strange, that small font that they use on all of their tweets, you'll see that there is an airdrop coming this Friday. So the price has since ballooned up. We've seen some rares sell for over 10 ETH. I've seen some go for 12, especially with like laser eyes and things. But this is just it's kind of an example of where the Ethereum NFT market is during the past week, right? Like Goblintown is kind of a colloquialism that's used in the space to talk about things being down, particularly floor prices, particularly prices of various cryptocurrencies, etc. So this is perfectly timed. And this launch, like I said, was a free mint that's just done exceptionally well. The rumor has it that, well, I guess the rumor mills have been swirling around this project because the founders are anonymous, but I dug into this a little bit more. And the rumor is that Yuga Labs might be behind it, which is why it's seen such dramatic growth over the past week. I don't personally buy it, but I found this, and I haven't told you this yet, Adam, on the leaked pitch deck from Yuga Labs for 2022. I believe it was for 2022, or it was their next 5 years, whatever the investment sort of pitch deck was used. There was a small item in the revenue portion that talked about goblins and actually said goblins, but they referred to it as just a revenue asset from secondary sales. So there would be no like public, there would be no air, it would either be airdrop to people or it would be a free mint. And this is literally goblins. It was a free mint. So the rumor mill has been swirling because that was on the deck. That's a confirmed that's a confirmed piece of information. So yeah, this is just crazy. I couldn't imagine buying these here. I've just been watching it in disbelief. I can't imagine them, performing well after this airdrop. I would bet, what is the floor, 7.8? I would imagine the airdrop and the floor would be quite low on Saturday morning. But yeah, that's just kind of the state of ETH. Nothing's really happening on other projects right now. Everything's been sort of trending downwards or sideways. So nothing else to really report. But Goblintown is the leader for sure. But I know you've got some mints on your radar that are coming up. Anything of note?
Yeah, I was just mentioning it before. We've got a couple of big ones coming up. And these were drastically bigger in hype levels and demand, I think, even just a week ago. So I've got 3 down here that I really want to touch on and kind of dive a little bit deeper. This is not all of them, but I'd say these are probably the biggest 3 in the next few days. So on June 5th, we've got Great Goats. And I never really loved these. They're another OK Bear derivative, kind of simple, clean artwork of an animal, right? They've got nothing going on in the project outside of the brand of NFT, which 2 weeks ago sounded like the best thing ever. But now, not so much. There was actually a Twitter space with, I don't think it was the main owner, but he was, whatever capacity it was a core member of their team. And man, they had so many influencers on there just absolutely berating this guy. It was really bad. I almost felt bad because the guy was just completely unprepared and just did not know how to respond properly. And it just really reflected negatively back on what their project is and kind of stands for. And then on top of that, they raised the mint price 0.75 from where they started it and then increased supply by 1,100 after, and I'm air quoting this, after accidentally over allocating whitelist.
So what's the mint price now?
It's 2.75.
Okay.
And that's not a terrible price considering that Sol right now, after the network has been down all day, is under $40, which is pretty scary.
Oh God.
Yeah. That's okay. I think, well, we're going lower. I think overall, I think this short little dip here is just the result of the network just resetting itself. But we'll talk about the network in a bit. Back to projects. So yeah, Great Goats just really rubbed me the wrong way.
Not so great.
Team seems really inexperienced. Really, they're literally, and I'm not even exaggerating when I say this, they're just old sneaker Twitter kids that pivoted from flipping Yeezys to flipping NFTs.
Yeah.
Which, and I'm not trying to, play that down as everyone who does that is, a negative aspect to the space, but they're not builders. They're just a cash grab.
Yeah.
It seems like
it's hard to really invest in some of these projects like that.
And normally we'd think that this is an easy mint and flip, but, and this will come up again later. I have so many things that connect in today's episodes. It'll all make sense by the end. But now basically Magic Eden isn't waiting until projects sell out to list them.
Yep.
So they might not do as well now because as soon as I buy one, if I pull a crappy looking one or a boring one, I could just throw that on the floor. Mm-hmm. And it's not as easy to profit off of something like this as it was even just a week ago.
Totally.
And we'll talk more about kind of the implications of that in a bit. But yeah, that's Great Goats. What I'm actually excited for is Vandal City. That's the next day on June 6th. These guys did a Twitter space and it was like hours long. I was up super late listening to it. I had to turn it off because I had to go to bed. It was like 2 a.m. It was absurd. But just listening to these guys speak, They sound super passionate about what they're doing. They sound super knowledgeable and educated. They've got a really great background that is both technical in a Web3 aspect and just in a financial aspect. They actually had another project called Solana Puppy Pound that at the time was pretty successful, but it was kind of like a growing pains project.
Sure.
Didn't go nearly as well as they'd hoped. I think I wasn't in that one, so I don't know too much about it outside of what I've seen within the past few days. But the cool thing is, even though they have this new huge, hyped up project coming up, they're not leaving Solana Puppy Pound behind.
Thank goodness.
I actually picked one of those up just in case.
There you go. I don't hate that.
So, but Vandal City is cool. I mean, it's this really unique take on gamified staking, which, hear me out before you write it off. So Vandal City is a city of thieves, essentially. You mint what looks like a bank robber almost, and you stake them for their vault token, and then you spend that token to go on what they call a vault hunt. And this is just one of the few things that you can do. I don't want to go too far into it because we'd be here forever, but it's cool. If you find one of these vaults that they're hiding, however that looks, I'm not really sure. I'd have to see it to really get real deep into it. But that vault has an X amount of Solana in it. And if you find it and can successfully unlock it, that's yours to keep. And I think that's pretty cool.
It's pretty sweet.
I've
kind of reminds me of Wolf Game on the ETH side of things with the cave game.
Yep.
Searching for these various resources, and if you find them, you get to keep them. And they're either NFTs or they're the wool token, which could be converted to ETH. I don't even know what the price of it is anymore. Unfortunately, I had like an ETH and a half worth of it. It's probably worth not even close to that anymore. But yeah, that this totally seems like it would be interesting if the artwork is good and the execution is solid.
For sure. Yeah, I'm after listening to the team just speak on it and kind of address. They actually had one guy come in and try to FUD them pretty hard, and they handled it relatively well. They had answers for every question. The guy at one point, at least up to what I heard, just couldn't really think of anything else to say to them.
Wow.
It was really handled well, and I'm excited for it. That's a 3 soul mint at 10,000 supply, which isn't terribly expensive in USD, but 3 soul is a little bit on the high end. I don't have whitelist, but if I did, I sure would be minting. I might even try to pick some up on secondary if I see them doing pretty well. I think that's probably the most promising one I see in the immediate future.
Sweet.
Then the next day, on June 7th, we've got Just Ape, and this one's a little scary.
I don't like ape projects anymore. I'll be honest. I'm over it. And I was saying this with Trippin' Apes. I just think the ape idea and concept is just so played out in NFTs, regardless of the chain. ETH, Sol, AVAX, even you can keep all your apes. The only apes I want are mutants or bored. And everything else, I don't know. Not really interested, but that's just an aside. I feel like
I don't mind the ape project.
I feel like it's not creative.
If the art's right.
I don't know. I mean, how many ape derivatives and different variations and styles can you really see? They're all so boring to me. And that's not really
fair. I think this one is unique enough.
Okay.
But not where I'm even going with this. I'm actually pretty bearish on this project, and it has nothing to do with their art. It has to do with the fact that they announced a 5 soul mint price, which is insane.
Pretty expensive.
Yeah.
All things considered.
Even though it's in USD, 5 soul is just an insane ask. We saw big names in the space like Solana Big Brain, Soulport Tom, and many other influencers just kind of come out and really crucify them on Twitter for it. I was actually amazed.
Wow.
It's 10,000 supply, so they're going to raise 50,000 soul, right? If I did that math right, minimum, just from the mint alone. And the guy who runs this is actually, and people try to spin this as a positive because I'm going to say it, it's going to sound good, then I'm going to tell you why it's bad. So he's actually the ex-co-owner of Famous Fox Federation, which I think you've heard of. Is they're one of the best Solana projects for sure.
Yep, totally.
However, there's a reason, and it's not a good one, but there's a reason that he's an ex-owner. The current owner, I believe his name is Drax, I've seen him quoted saying that they basically had to force him off the team. I don't know if that means they fired him or they forced him to resign. Regardless, the guy was just really in it for the money, just had really impure intentions, and they had to remove him. So obviously not a great sign when you're asking for 5 Sol.
I don't hate the idea of being in this space for the money, because I think that's why a lot of us are here. Probably most of us are here, if we're being completely honest. However, when you're trying to launch a project, I almost treat projects like startups. If you're going to invest in a startup and you're really just in it for the money, especially when NFTs are so, you can just kind of get away with anything if you're a founder, and there will be very few repercussions, especially if you're not doxxed. Hearing that is not a good thing.
Yeah, for sure. I don't know. I feel like it's a little bit different in Sol versus ETH in that regard. I've always thought that Sol is a bit more community based.
Sure.
And they kind of take that thing a little bit more seriously. Maybe that's just a biased opinion, but I want to share this one take I saw. I brought up Solport Tom before, another super respected name. He said that if you frame it as someone like myself, right, who bought Sol at anywhere from 80 to 100, I'm down 40 to 60% on my initial Sol purchase already, given that we're back at 40.
Let's go.
So
needed that.
Yeah. So if you're asking me for 5 Sol, I mean, at one point I paid $400 or $500 for that.
Yeah, that's not great. If you've had the Sol for a while, not good. Not good.
Yeah, and Solport Tom, I really like, because he's never, even through all of that, he never really took direct shots at the project, or he's never really aggressive. He looks at a very, whole worldly, outside perspective, which we don't see very often. But yeah, I mean, let me see if I can find.
It's just tough. When you're trying to price these projects fairly, right? Like Solana at one point was over $200, and now it's $40. So I understand these teams that want to make what would that be, $200 an NFT? That's a reasonable price. That's fairly cheap if we're thinking about it in the macro sense. However, for those people that bought Solana when it was at a high or on a run, you don't want to be using that Sol now, because you're basically taking a loss. You are taking a loss on that, and you're converting that Sol into an NFT. And if that's a good choice for your risk tolerance, then by all means. But gosh, if my 5 Sol was worth half, I wouldn't be buying an NFT with it, I don't think.
It also really depends on the type of project, right? This was
if it was a guaranteed hit. Yeah.
If it was more than just a brand, I think, not even a guaranteed hit. If they were doing something progressive and innovative, I'd be way more inclined. But I mean, this is just another one in the line of super hyped up flip projects to me.
Yeah,
they're not doing anything. So,
oh well,
I don't really like them. And then going back to that, now Magic Eden is listing stuff before it mints out. I mean, 5 Sol, if you get a common one and you don't like it, you know how fast that could go under mint?
I'm selling that for then 2.5 instantly.
Yeah. So, I mean, I'm not completely writing it off yet, because, I mean, we're still a week out, and sure, anything can change, but I don't know. You got to approach things way differently than we did a week ago.
Absolutely.
And it's really important, and I'm still learning how to navigate this new kind of rule book, we'll call it. And I don't know what the best practice is just yet. I'm just observing and learning, and if I see the opportunity, I'm willing to risk it, I'll take it. But it's so different, and it's so important to just be ready to adapt to whatever happens next.
100%. 100%. And I know you had an ETH project that was on your radar as well, but this one actually is a crossover, the first of its kind from what we gathered.
Yep. So you're hearing a rare occurrence for sure. I won't be finding ETH projects typically, but this is a 10,000 supply ETH project from the Boryoku Dragons, who are pretty well known in Solana. They're one of the OG blue chips.
Yeah. Legacy.
If you're listening to this, yeah, for sure. If you're listening to this, I imagine you've heard of them, most likely. And if not, check price, good price.
Well, but, not in USD, but anyway.
I mean, they're still
pretty good, but they're not what they were.
No, Well, nothing is.
Yeah, that's
but not the point. So yeah, we had the Akumu Dragons at a 0.169 mint price. Right now, I think they're at about a 0.7 floor.
Mm-hmm.
They did have a little bit of a minting issue. There was an exploit where if you had the whitelist token, which was an airdrop that Boryoku holders got, called the Blood Moon Boku. Ironically, that one sold for like 45 Sol, which I think was even over an ETH when you did the math. So to see this under that is just, math doesn't add up.
Nope.
But yeah, I mean, people were able to, I don't know how they did it, but some guy I saw was able to mint over 100.
I hate when this happens, man. It's just
they, it is, but the team was pretty quick to act on it and kind of stop it from happening again. I think only like 5% of their total supply was really affected, and people weren't too upset about it.
Yeah, I mean, that's good that they were able to fix it, but it's just like, it's when you see something like that and you had high hopes for a project, it's so frustrating to feel that it wasn't executed correctly.
For sure. But all is well. People aren't too mad from what I've seen. That's and there's about 3,500 supply left on a public mint that I think got delayed 48 hours, if I'm not mistaken. Website just says coming soon.
Okay. I know we had some guys that minted this from some of the ETH chats that I'm in, so they seem to have sold since, just because it's kind of unpredictable. But I think the bigger picture here is the fact that Solana and Ether are seeing a bit of a crossover. I'm interested to see what happens if the Solana guys actually go over to ETH and maybe take some interest in that chain. I know most of the talk has been about ETH guys transitioning to Solana, but I'd be interested to see if the opposite happens. I wouldn't be surprised if the answer to that is no, because ETH is pretty unforgiving, a little bit more unforgiving than Solana.
I don't see it happening.
No. Really,
unless you're a big player in the Sol space. I think that, I mean, the Dragons are such a small, it's so hard. They don't, I feel like, do much. They're just the original.
Yep.
And maybe I'm wrong. I don't follow them too closely.
Well, first to market is a significant thing. Like, that's why
for sure. I'm not trying to lower their status by any means.
Yeah,
I just mean that I think the Boryoku Dragons are like 1,000 supply.
Yeah.
Or some super low number like that. I just don't know that they make a big enough splash in the overall consumer space to really bridge that gap.
I don't think so.
I mean,
I don't think they will, personally.
It's certainly a start.
Yeah.
That's for sure. I don't know. It's a totally different ballgame.
I should have done this math before we started. I'd be curious to know USD value. How much is a Kumu Dragon versus a Boryoku? What's the difference there in USD?
Boryoku's definitely more.
Yeah, but I wonder, is it a huge multiplier?
Live math right now. So Boryoku is at a...
All right, you do Boryoku, I'll do Akuma.
Boryoku's at a 172 floor, so we'll multiply that by 40.
40.
We're at about 6,800 USD.
Okay, and Akumu is at a 0.7 at an $1,800 ETH, so we're at about a $1,280 USD price.
Yeah.
So not as large of a gap as I would have thought, but still a gap. Okay, well that's interesting to see, and let's see what happens with that project. Well, definitely one on my radar.
Yeah, I'd probably be flipping it off of public. I don't see what these do outside of existing and kind of capitalizing on the hype of the mint right now.
Yeah.
Or just holding it until something happens. Both good options.
Sure. I think in that point, that sub 1 ETH range is really hard to buy in Ethereum. This might be one of the biggest contenders for being a solid buy long term, but I don't typically like to play sub 1 ETH just because there's way too many flippers in the space. People are able to kind of scale their acquisitions, and the holder distribution kind of goes down as that happens, and people are just kind of load up, getting ready for a small pump to then offload all of their holdings.
Yeah,
so sure. That's why I kind of
especially when we have people with 100 of them.
Right, exactly. And you had a guy that exploited it too. So who knows? I mean, who knows who's being silent about their exploit, or if they were using multiple wallets? I would find it hard to believe it was only one guy, but I digress.
Oh, just one that I saw.
Yeah. Well, cool. So I know you teased a couple of topics, but for our next segment, NFT Space News, I know there's some things happening in Magic Eden and in the larger Solana space, the larger network, I guess, in general.
Yeah. So I mentioned before, Magic Eden is no longer waiting until projects are fully minted out to list. And there's a few reasons for that. One is simply because sites like Coral Cube and Hyperspace, their new competitors, are doing it without any permission, essentially.
Yep.
And they're just trying to capitalize that market share, which as a business, can't say I blame them, but I think it's a little shady, but not important. So Magic Eden's hand has now been forced, essentially, right? And it certainly changes the dynamic of things. Back to what we were saying before, if something mints out, but then secondary immediately shows signs of slowing down, that's going to immediately kill all momentum on mints. And we saw that happen twice, actually, yesterday. We had the Wandering Javi project and the Vincenia project. I probably still am saying that wrong. But both super hyped up for 2-3 weeks and absolutely flopped because of this. They just could not sustain the hype once people started selling. And that's kind of where I see a lot of these big brand projects going. There's a couple different angles to look at it. There's that. There's, as the buyer, I mean, it protects you, and the secondary buyer specifically, that kind of protects you from making what could be a bad purchase, which I actually think will be beneficial in the long run. I like looking at it that way. I think it eliminates the ease for anybody to make anything and just have a crap project and just immediately have it sell out and print money off of. Totally. I think that's going to be beneficial for the space. But I think, and unfortunately, it makes it a lot tougher for people to mint off whitelist. Because, normally with whitelist, it would just be like, oh, let's mint it and make money off it immediately. No brainer. That's not the case anymore.
Yeah. You got to be more cautious. And when you get an insight into the aftermarket performance of a project, you not only get to figure out, if it's worth, I know people run the Solana bots on all of these projects as soon as they mint out to get a good entry. Like, you got to decide if that's something you want to make the entry on. And also, if you have the mint, if you have the whitelist, you got to be able to decide if it's worth minting. And sometimes, perception is reality when it came to these things. And in terms of true demand, right? Like, you could end up minting something that sold out within minutes, or you're watching that supply counter kind of tick down. But in reality, there's no real secondary buyers waiting to kind of grab it as soon as it hits the floor. So definitely an interesting change to the meta, I would even argue. I know ETH has had this for a while, right? Like, the whitelist typically goes first. They hit the floor immediately. The price is kind of set from there. It's always interesting to see where that happens and how it happens. But it'll be cool to see how it affects Solana. And I like your take that long-term it's beneficial.
Yeah, I mean, just to kind of give a game plan to kind of look at as a whitelist minter, right? What I've been suggesting to those who are looking at these hyped up projects, or really any project, is to just wait until the end of the whitelist period, and then kind of, you got to give yourself enough time, because the network obviously is not always functional, and your mints will fail over and over again because TPS is an average of like 3 to 4 on a good day. Yeah. Not 100, just 3 to 4. But yeah, I mean, you got to just kind of play the timing right now and just make the best decision possible. Or, if you're not comfortable losing that money, just don't mint it.
It's kind of tough when you say timing, though, because in terms of activity and tracking in the network.
Yeah. Yep. So it's fixed now after they took the network down for about 4 hours today.
Oh, good.
But the timer was 4 hours behind on the activity reader on anything. I don't know how it happened. I guess it's just from the overwhelming amount of traffic it gets constantly. But man, the site's been Magic Eden's been going down every day for over a week.
Jeez.
Solana TPS has been horrendous. I mean, the network itself is a mess.
And don't get it twisted. This can kill projects, especially new ones. Absolutely.
Yeah, and we're kind of watching that right now. There's a lot of stuff bleeding live on air at the moment.
Gosh.
Good buying opportunity potentially for some stuff.
Well, there you go.
But yeah, I mean, stuff that would normally say bought less than a minute ago would say bought 4 hours ago. So it's like impossible to track.
Yep.
And it made it very difficult for me to really buy anything over the weekend. and it's just not ideal situation for what you want.
Absolutely not.
Your ability to make it the best decision you possibly can.
And the bottleneck just kind of hurts. It just hurts momentum of any projects. I know I was talking specifically about, some of the bigger ones, but, when people can't buy these projects or sell them, as soon as that they're available to do so, they'll be looking to do it at whatever price is possible, because this just loses, investor confidence in the network. And it affected me a little bit too. I was a little, tilted off of this information as well. It's not a good feeling when you can't really interact with your NFTs, especially when you're not used to being able to, or not having the ability to do that. So,
yeah, we made a group play in our 30 Sol challenge too, which will, again, foreshadowing a bit, we'll talk about in a few minutes, but got completely drained of most momentum because of the network crashing and Magic Eden going down.
Brutal.
But anyway, we'll get to that in a few minutes. So we got the winners and losers of the week now. It's really only one winner in my book this week, and that is
the same book.
Yeah, same book, same author. Anyone who bought Goblintown, anything under really anything.
Anything under probably 6 ETH, I would bet at this point, literally.
Yeah.
If you didn't fade this like we did, you're up at least an ETH, $1,800, $2,000. I think we've seen it fluctuate, but 2 to 3 ETH a day. So if you've successfully day traded this, you are looking at thousands of dollars in profit over the past week. So congrats to those that saw this project and thought it was for them. I saw it and thought it was definitely not for me. But definitely those are the winners of the week in my book.
We had one of our team members buy 10 of them.
Epic.
He made some pretty life-changing money.
I love those plays and those stories. To be able to have that level of conviction. I had that for Goop Dudes and I ended up selling a bunch of them, but
man, Goop Dudes walked so goblins could run.
There you go.
I said that to you earlier, and I will die on that.
Goop Dudes will come back. I've got some in my hidden folder, or maybe not even in my hidden folder.
In your hidden?
No, they're not hidden yet. I can't do it to them. I paid too much for them.
Gotta unhide those.
I paid half an ETH for both of those, so I still got them. Anyway, so we've got some losers of the week. Obviously, number one loser in my book, Solana Network. Not great. Just not great. We talked about it earlier. But then you've also got Just Ape.
Yeah, I mean, Just Ape, I've never seen a worse reaction to a mint price in my life. Granted, my life of NFTs is about a couple months long.
Well,
but
it's a couple years in NFT time, so not bad.
Yeah, for real. I mean, I hope they got some sort of plan to really improve that public eye and PR relationship, because, man, they're not doing so hot right now.
Let's hope so. Jeez.
But they really, I mean, these are influencers that never, ever speak poorly on projects that came out and immediately just burn these guys to the ground. Yeah. So for that to happen, it had to be pretty bad.
Yeah, not great. I mean, not great. I mean, you've already talked about it, but I can't even believe that this stuff that these people still kind of get away with this. I
don't think they will. I really don't.
It's got to end at some point. It's like that meme. He can't keep getting away with this. I just don't. It's got to end eventually, right?
Oh man, I love that meme.
Yeah. Well, cool. So we have our personal weekly rundowns next, and I know last week we talked about a couple of things that we were buying and selling, or looking to enter and possibly make a play on. I know you minted Trippin' Apes, I believe.
I did, and for some reason, against my own advice, against your advice, and anyone with a brain's advice, I didn't sell it yet. I still have it.
Oof. Can we get a floor check on Trippin' Apes?
It's about 25. Could have sold at 80. But I did mint a rare. Let's see what the floor on I've got the HUD glasses.
Nice.
Pretty cool looking. I was looking earlier. Floor on mine is 50, so I mean, I'm still doing pretty good.
There you go. I wonder what the floor will be when the network crashes again.
I'm gonna be an optimist here. I think they've got it under control for at least a week or two.
Let's hope. I hope for everybody's sake. Gosh.
We'll see. But yeah, I mean, and this kind of goes to OK Bears also. I've noticed that anytime their community really says anything, the price goes up, even if it's the smallest little thing. They've actually got some sort of voice chat coming up here. We're recording this on a Tuesday night. Or Wednesday night, sorry.
Yeah.
I don't know what day it is anymore.
Yeah.
But yeah, they've got a voice chat coming up here in a few minutes. So I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if the price starts to move a little bit just from that.
Hey man, number go up. That's all that matters, right?
Should I have sold at 80? Probably. Am I upset with where I'm at? Not terribly. I mean, I minted this for 3.25. I'm still up over 20 sold.
Yeah.
So pretty happy with that.
No, that's not bad.
And and while I don't think they're the most innovative team, I do think they're coming from a good place and they have their project's best interest in mind. And, you know, I'm not opposed to holding it from here just to see what happens. I mean, if I didn't sell it at 80, I'm not going to sell it at 25.
Well, you say that now, but it could be 15 next week. It's always hard to use those as like those barometers.
For sure.
So,
and that's just my own personal choice, I
absolutely, yeah. At this point, you know, it's your risk tolerance.
I did get an airdrop of a mushroom-looking thing that's worth like 3 or 4. So
the Ponzi continues. Shout out to airdrops.
Yes, sir. Airdrop mode.
Just creating value out of absolutely nowhere. It's pretty unbelievable. Only in the NFT space.
Never fails. Yep. Yeah. Never fails. But so I don't know what it does yet. Should know pretty soon. They've got some NFT NYC stuff coming up. So
cool. NFT NYC should be sweet. I was hoping I would get a +1 for the Moonbirds event because I would love, you know, for Adam to join me so we could get some cool content there. But
dude, just buy me a Moonbird.
Yeah, that's simple. That might be the solution. So, but I have been looking at Moonbirds, and maybe that's a transition to some stuff I've been looking at before you talk about the rest of your stuff. Looking at Moonbirds for sure. They've been holding, you know, above 20 ETH. I really like them between like 16 and 18 at an ETH price maybe of like 1,500. If we'll see that, I might be a buyer. Also checking out Oddities, the Moonbirds airdrop. That's a pretty interesting project to me just because it is, you know, the first airdrop. The reveal is sometime in July. There's like a ticker counting down on the Oddities website. I haven't looked at it in a few days, and I don't want to do the math of adding the days to today. But that is a project I'm excited for. I was a buyer under 3 ETH. However, it's under 3 ETH and it's been holding there. So I'm really holding out for like 2.4, maybe like a 2 ETH if I could get it. Thinking about sending some offers there. But last week I talked a bit about chimpers. I have since sold my chimper and the ebook. I was able to exit with about 0.23 in profit. And I used all of those funds to get an other side deed. And that was a choice I made because I wanted to get an artifact. So I've got that. I ended up buying a little bit too early. I think the floor on my artifact now is like 3.8. I spent like 4.2, so not amazing, but excited to see what happens on July 16th for that interactive kind of reveal on other deeds. Chimpers just didn't work out the way I would have hoped. The trade was a little bit crowded. And like I've been kind of saying, I've been hesitant to make trades because I feel like the space is crowded. There's far more sellers than there are buyers right now. If you guys can check out NFT Go for more info on that. That's a pretty cool chart I like to use, sellers versus buyers. But that gives me a general idea of how many people are really interested in making moves. It seems like people are not right now. But yeah, I know you've got some more stuff that's on your radar.
Yeah, so I have a couple more plays I made last week I wanted to kind of highlight here. One, we're going to talk about that challenge, 30 Soul Challenge community wallet. That was the Fat Cats Capital. It was going super well until the network died. It totally killed all the momentum on it. And now we're not looking too hot, fortunately. But the reason we bought those was going back to that projects are not waiting to list until they mint out anymore. These were holding well above mint cost. I think it pretty much 2x for pretty much throughout the day. Steady volume. It was looking good. Clean artwork. Cool project. There was more than just a profile picture. There's some sort of incubator for upcoming projects. And I forgot to check. They might have went live today. But yeah, I mean, we bought 2 of them for our community wallet. I bought 3 of them myself. And all was well until, we say this all the time as a joke, but the music literally stopped this time. It just completely went dead.
Gotta watch out for that music. Gotta listen closely.
It happened like 3 times. The network just shut down and Magic Eden shut down. It just killed any momentum, which sucks. But
it's tough.
If you timed it right, you did get out a little bit ahead. I did not, fortunately. but that's, I feel like, kind of an extenuating circumstance.
Sure.
As much as I'd like to strategize around it, that's
you can't.
a tough one. Yeah. They're at about a 1.9 floor right now, which is not great. And I know a bunch of guys in the group bought into with us. So hopefully we'll see some turnaround there now that the network's back alive. Everything kind of seems down right now, so I'm not really sure if anyone has really addressed anything just yet in any project. But another one that we caught super cheap was the X Street Terriers. They got as high as 2 SOL. I saw them at like 2 in the morning on Saturday at 0.1. I threw them in chat. I said, hey, it's probably not going to be anything, but they look cool and they're being bought a ton. Go ahead if you feel like it. So super degen. I only bought one, which I really regret.
One is better than none, though. So
it is, but my logic here was I should have bought 10. Obviously, hindsight 2020, but
I don't think I've ever made. I've only made one volume play like that. I typically don't like to buy 10 of something that's seems dramatic.
10 of that was 1 SOL.
Well, there
which
you
was
go.
$40. It was $40.
Yeah. Gosh.
So should have bought more. Tons of members made money on that. I think some of them made like double-digit SOL profits, which is really awesome.
It's pretty good.
But yeah, I was stoked to catch that one. And had I realized that it would be more than what it was, would have went way harder. But, one's better than none. You're not wrong. And then in terms of what I'm still really looking at, I don't know if the price has changed since this morning, but I'm still looking at Dust. And that's just solely because we're still waiting on some information about Duppies, which is Gen 2 DGods.
And Dust is a token for those that don't know, right? It's a token on Solana.
Yep, Dust is the DGods token. And I don't see a world unless, which unfortunately this looks more and more possible by the day.
Oh no.
Unless Sol NFTs completely die. It's not actually going to happen. I'm just being dramatic. But, I mean, a lot would have to fail for Dust to not, in my eyes, go up closer to the Duppies mint. And once we kind of know what is going on with that. And we'll have more on that in a future episode once we have some more info ourselves. But yeah, I mean, that's really all I'm watching right now. Everything, it's just so day-to-day. I feel like there's no real promising projects that I feel like I missed a lot of the good ones already, and there's not too much room to go up on those.
Sure.
At least for now. I'd say Vandal City has been a potential that I'm watching for, but a lot of these are all game time decisions, so it's hard to really call anything out this far in advance, but that's at least where my head's at.
Absolutely. Well, my head looking at the Solana market is that I bought OK Bears too early, and I've been patiently waiting to try to get another or two to bring my entry down. My average entry, I believe, is around 200 SOL. Last I looked, the floor is like 130, maybe even in the 120s. Not great, but I did just market buy SOL at the time, and I think I was a buyer at SOL at like $45. So I'm really not down too much on that. I'm not the guy that had SOL at 100. I wouldn't have been buying NFTs with that, I don't think. So lucky to have made that buy. But I am looking for a lower entry just to kind of bring my average cost down. I still believe in the project, very much so actually. But I think it was just obviously unsustainable. The hype that it was garnering in the Solana network being down doesn't help either. So definitely watching those. But I'm also checking out.
Might not be a bad time to buy.
Yeah, I was checking out some right now. I was actually looking.
There's a lot of chatter.
A lot of chatter about some stuff going on
in the next 2 weeks.
Yeah, so 130 SOL floor, 1,544 listed out of 10,000, almost 6,000 unique owners, which is pretty nice. I think that number's gone up. You could probably snag some really cool ones, basically like where I was buying. So got to do some more digging. I was trying to get Adam to buy one with me with his Trip and Ape money, but that money is now less money than it was. So
yeah,
we'll revisit that at a later date, I would imagine. But that's all.
If I played it right, I could have just bought one myself. Didn't even have to.
There you go. That would have been optimal, but
that would have had to time the top there perfectly and the bottom tier.
And you just can't do that. It's just not realistic. I mean, I hope no one holds themselves to that expectation. It's just not possible. You gotta sell when you think is right and buy when you think is right. Timing the top and bottom is legitimately impossible. So,
yep, we've tried and failed almost every time. Sometimes you get lucky,
but we keep trying. I think that's the
we do
thing,
keep
right?
trying.
Well, cool.
Never give up.
Well, I think I think the theme of today's episode was either not great or moving sideways, and that's a pretty solid transition to our conversation topic with Garrett, founder of GFNF, founder and or owner of GFNF. He shares his perspective a little bit more on navigating through these bear markets, his macroeconomic perspective, and where he kind of thinks things are going in general. It was eye-opening for me to listen to what he had to say, because I think you and I are pretty in the weeds with NFTs. So hearing someone who is sort of playing it more, maybe a little more closely to the vest, not making big buys, kind of just watching from afar, was interesting to me. What did you think?
Yeah, I mean, you'll notice I don't even say too much. A lot of it is just me kind of soaking it in and contributing where I can. Yep. I mean, like you said, we're so deep into one aspect of it. Sometimes we forget to really think of it as a big picture. And Garrett really does a great job as setting those expectations and really setting yourself up for kind of how to survive in a time like this, which is really crucial information and super insightful.
Yeah.
It was really, really awesome conversation.
Biggest takeaway for me was just being patient. And it's something I've been trying to do. I don't like to keep a lot of liquid, but I have been, just because I know we'll be able to get some of these discounts. And if what he's talking about comes to pass, we might be able to get some really good stuff at really low prices. So always staying ready for that. So I hope you guys enjoy that segment coming up here in just a second.
Yeah. So before we go, thanks for tuning into episode 2. If you want to find us in our group, join our waitlist at gfnf.io. Find us on Twitter at GFNF with 2 underscores, or if you want to find our own personal Twitters, you can go to mine at slumped1641 with no E, and then Aidan is at AD1097. So Thanks for listening to the episode, and here's the interview.
Thanks again, guys. All right, so we've actually got our good friend and owner of GFNF, Garrett, with us here today. He was nice enough to join us for our second episode of NFT Tactics. So his Twitter handle was recently changed to @bearish with 2 underscores. And we're going to be talking a little bit more about why that was changed and his thoughts on sort of the NFT market and the macro market in general. He's got some insights that he wanted to share, and we'd love to hear more about them. So Garrett, thank you so much for joining us.
Definitely. I really appreciate you guys having me on, and excited to talk about some of these things. They're pretty pressing to me, and I'm pretty staunch in where I believe the market's going.
So you've actually made you said 180-degree reversal from where you were before, kind of starting out as a Bitcoin maxi. Anything you want to talk about there?
Yeah, man. When I was first really exposed to cryptocurrency, and started to really just look into the technicals of it, and started to realize, hey, the world truly is going towards a blockchain-esque type of commerce and communication, which I still do believe 100%. But the asterisk by that is I think it's going to be really centralized by governments. I don't think it's going to be the little guy getting rich from that in a Bitcoin type scheme. But yeah, that being said, there was a point where I kind of bought into the narrative that Bitcoin was an inflationary hedge that was going to act similar to gold and literally go contrary to legacy markets, stock markets, and everything that is being impacted by inflation. What we've seen quite the opposite over the last year or more, you could argue, is Bitcoin actually going in perfect synchronization with these legacy markets. I saw someone tweet just the other day, I can't wait to see the stock market open so I can know what crypto is going to do this week. And truly, I don't believe that cryptocurrencies are an inflation hedge. Matter of fact, it seems more likely that it is the pico top of the everything bubble that we've seen bubbling and rising over the last 20 years, really peaked over the last 2 years with money printing. I believe 50, 60, 70% of the current dollars in circulation were added to the economy and printed over the last 2 years. These numbers are staggering, and these speculative markets, I think crypto, NFTs are at the very, very pico top of this bubble.
Totally. Yeah. And, when I first was introduced to cryptocurrency, my thoughts were very much similar. I thought these were kind of decoupled from the general market, being used as a hedge unbanking yourself, kind of just freeing yourself from that system. But we've come to find out, in spades that that's really not the case. When the NASDAQ is down, crypto is down. It's very much correlated, and it's been kind of eye-opening over the past, especially a few weeks, to kind of see that both of those things kind of trend in the exact same direction there.
I completely agree, and these are my sentiments on the market without any black swan events like UST Luna taking place. And when you factor in the fact that there are so many shady players and really questionable players that have become pillars to the crypto market as we know it, UST and God forbid USDT Tether, potentially, the potential downfall of Tether being 4x the market cap of UST. I think that these black swan events that are kind of just dangling on the horizon are going to be enough to really sink this ship. Crypto markets are down much more drastically than the stock market at this point, even though you do have some of the big FANG stocks, Netflix, some of the really, really inflated tech stocks are off 40 to 80% from their highs, whereas cryptocurrency, it's 50 to 90% everywhere. It's completely bloody, and I think that there's a lot lower to go from here.
Yeah. Especially like some of the more risky altcoins. I think we talked about it a bit last week, but with your big players like Bitcoin, even Ethereum, you'll see less of a drastic drop, but it'll be a slow grind down. But with these other altcoins, like you don't want to go anywhere near those in markets like these. At least I don't.
Exactly. And like even as someone that's bearish, Bitcoin is still king, and it's still, out of the flames of a bear market, Bitcoin is going to be the strongest to bounce back. And it's, I would say, in that sense, the least risky place you could park your money if you want to speculate on crypto and NFTs would be Bitcoin. Ethereum, although it's kind of coupled pretty tightly with Bitcoin, it's still kind of my casino chips is how I look at it and act with Ethereum. Like anytime I have ETH, it just goes towards speculating even harder on NFTs. So.
Totally.
But yeah, it's really interesting to see. I think that a lot of I don't think that the blood is over yet. Truly.
Well, I don't think any of us do. These relief bounces have been, I think, just that, kind of pump fakes in the larger scheme of things, because there's no macro conditions, at least that I can tell, that signal anything otherwise, right? Like we were talking the other day about, inflations and particularly people's or citizens' savings account balances being at an all-time low, with consumer price indexes kind of rising. Is there anything more you wanted to discuss there? I think you had some pretty cool insights.
Definitely. Yeah. I think that the macroeconomics are bleak at best. I mean, you have first world fiat currencies literally hyperinflating and collapsing today, like in real time over the last, 1 day, 1 month, 6 months. You see countries like Turkey, Japan, Germany, France, their currencies are nuking. And all of these fiats are hinged off of USD ultimately. This hyperinflation is a global problem. Europe loves printing money even more than the US does. Japan is one of the catalysts of the current global economic problems as far as hyperinflation and first world economies collapsing. It's really, really bleak. In the US, consumer pricing is at all-time highs as far as our lifetime, and really where we've ever seen it relative to income. Income and earnings are not going up. The savings accounts in the United States, this was one of the craziest metrics that I've seen recently. It was a chart gauging the savings accounts of U.S. households. And essentially they peaked around the time of the stimulus check towards the beginning of COVID, when everyone's restaurants and movie theaters and everything was shut down. So they're being forced to save money, and being coupled with the extra money printing and stimulus being added to their bank account. So that's when people's savings peaked. And now in May of 2022, soon to be summer of 2022, people's savings are lower than pre-pandemic lows. Like there's no more juice. People are spending the last of their juice, the last of their gas on buying gas and on buying food, because the lower tiers of our economy is it's being knocked out from underneath us. It's really bleak globally and locally on the United States level. So I don't see, and frankly, these speculative asset classes, we saw what it took to get these NFT bull runs, right? We saw what it took to get NFT summer of 2021 and the big pump of December and January. What it took was 2, 3, 4x the number of active traders, new money, VC money by the boatload being introduced into the space to speculate. Right now, we are seeing the opposite. We're seeing the number of active traders going down day to day. And frankly, there's just the same money being washed around and more liquidity being pulled out. I don't think that we're going to ever, I personally don't think that within this cycle, we are going to reach the all-time highs of apes and punks and stuff like that. I do think that from all this blood and all this negative talk, there's going to be generational wealth buying opportunities. I really believe that the comparison to draw is that $6 Amazon, right? Before the tech boom, Amazon shares were $6 and they went up to near $200 in the peak of the hype. And then when that bubble popped, everything came tumbling down, including the companies with vital and actual good white papers that were actually in the green, making profits, turning profits with good business models like Amazon. Amazon got that back down to $6, $7. That was the buy. You would have changed your family's lineage forever if you bought that dip. So I think that we are going to see a modern form of that in the near future here when we get to the Pico bottom and Max Payne, which obviously I don't know when that's going to be. Gary Vee and a lot of people that I think are really, they have their finger on the pulse of the macros on this market, and they have since the very beginning. They're adamant that, like, from the ashes of this thing, we should have the opportunity to buy, 10, 20 ETH CryptoPunks, maybe at an $800 Ethereum price. And that would be the buy, right? Buying the lows, averaging out into your apes and punks and, your quote unquote blue chips, your Bitcoin, and all of these things that are blockchain-esque speculative assets. When the bottom comes, that would be the buy of a lifetime. So I truly do believe that. I believe that all these assets and this technology is viable. I just think that it's a bubble right now. We're a little bit too early. Just like in the late 90s when all these .coms and all these websites and all these companies were promising the world, but none of them were making profits. All the speculative money came from the fact that people knew that this technology was here to stay and it was going to change the world, but it was just a little bit too early. So that bubble had to pop. And the same thing I believe is true. Like when I think about the fact, okay, Other Side Land, Bored Ape Yacht Club, they generated tens and hundreds of millions of dollars, like literally just disgusting amounts of money on pure speculation. No one's in the metaverse yet, man. Fortnite and these type of gaming is the closest thing that we have to metaverse yet. And that community is so far from accepting the idea of an NFT commerce, a fully engulfing metaverse. So I guess I just think that we're a little bit too early for these prices. And I think that a $500,000 CryptoPunk I don't really think that that's necessarily ridiculous because of what they are. But right now, you can't eat these things, man. And I think that we're coming up to a time when a percentage of the world's population is going to be figuring out how they're going to eat.
Totally. Yeah. And these are, I mean, let's not kid ourselves. These are the new form of luxury goods. I mean, in my mind, right? Like no one really buys luxury goods in a real market downturn. And we've seen that reflected in the daily active traders, the amount of money being traded on all of the platforms combined. I think we've been ranging between 20 and 40 million, which is drastically down from the $100 million days that we were doing consistently, even just a few weeks ago when Other Sides really that run really began. So it's been very interesting to watch. I know, obviously our podcast, we talk about our NFT strategies and things like that. And I think the macro implications of these larger markets and systems at play are things that we might overlook. We're very much so in the weeds with these NFT projects. But I think we might miss the forest for those trees, so to speak. So, but yeah, really appreciative of you for sharing your perspective on that. Do you think that there's any signal that for you that would show that, maybe more active wallets or more traders would kind of come onto NFTs and we might see another move like that? Or is there anything in particular that you're looking out for?
Well, as far as active wallets goes, I don't have any metrics that is like my line in the sand for when I would really, start speculating again with big sums of money. From my perspective right now, I'm aware that like the real money is made in bear markets, right? Not when everyone and their mother is piling into a project like other side. Like that's a perfect example. The most hype mint ever, most anticipated mint ever, most lucrative mint, most gas burnt ever, and there's almost no profit to be had. If you held 1-2 days after the mint, you're basically at break even, right? It's just completely optimized when everyone's piled into the space like that. Whereas the opposite scenario is, early last summer, or I believe it was early last summer, maybe early fall, actually, after the mutants, when the market was a bit bearish. It was cooled off. That's when Nifty and Slumped, you can speak to this for sure. That's when Nifty Gateway had their lowest print numbers on their open editions, and that completely bottlenecked the supply. And now those are the holy grail of Nifty Gateway pieces, worth the most money that people are willing to pay the most for to complete the sets. So that evidences the fact that if you're paying attention and you care to pay attention and you still want to do some speculating, the real wealth is truly made in bear cycles and emerging from bear cycles.
It's funny that you mentioned Nifty Gateway, as ironically we haven't really seen the numbers like we were even 2-3 months ago, and just the caliber of the projects there. I check them every day. I feel like they've gotten lower. So bear market or not, I think what's bringing me to Nifty Gateway, I guess, is where I'm at with that.
Right, definitely. I think more so just like in the sense of when you're paying attention to the market in these bear cycles, right? Like that's just a great example of the fact that, hey, people need these open editions to complete the sets. And because the market was bearish and downtrodden when these things minted out, they're the lowest mint number, and anyone that's holding those is going to make a ton of money. And the same with people that are accumulating the bottoms. I don't know where the bottom of this stuff is, man. Some people that are really good at charting, are saying that anything under, like Crypto Jack, right? Saying anything under 30K Bitcoin is a great buy. Other people that are really good and successful at crypto say charts are BS. The markets are all emotion. If, all it takes is one more, and there's black swan events, man, war, other things that can really imagine boots on the ground in another form of war, on the international stage, which is highly tense right now. Yeah. That can just send everything spiraling out of control. So I don't have any immediate signals for what I should be when I'm going to start really buying back in heavy and going balls deep on this thing. But I'm still trying to stay cognitive and pay attention and try to find that Nifty Gateway Open Edition that is going to be bottlenecked in the next bull cycle and be 100x, if that makes sense.
Totally. And it's hard. For me, it's been very hard to be patient with all this stuff. I've been someone who's really wanted to buy a mutant ape, for example, right? And I have the liquid to do it. That's not the issue. I've just really been okay, my price target, right, is 15 ETH. I think 15 would be a fair price for them. And they touched 16 and a half over this past weekend, but now they're back up to 18, and then ETH is higher too. So it's oh darn, did I actually, could I have missed this? But I think the key here, and what I'm gathering from what you're saying is there's no real macro indicator that things are getting better. And these nice to have investment risk on assets like NFTs, maybe they might get these small bounces, but in the macro, I think we do go lower. So it's really important to be patient. And sometimes it's hard to when we see mutant apes at 40 plus ETH a few weeks ago, and now they're sub 20. But I think patience will really pay off here. Like you said, looking for those, like the CryptoPunk example of trying to get them around 10 ETH. That sounds crazy to some, but I don't think that that's too far off from the truth for some projects. I don't know if CryptoPunks are the ones that'll go to 10. If that goes to 10, I would imagine everything else is going to decimal points. But yeah, I think that sentiment is a good one. And it's definitely one that's informing my perspective, and it's helped me be a lot more patient. I typically don't like to keep a lot of liquid on the side. I like to be invested in the market, but I've really tried to be patient. And with the days that pass, I think my vision is a little bit clearer and my price targets are a little bit more solid.
I think it's super wise. And, you hear a lot of people talking about zooming out. And I think that there's a lot of zooming out to be done here, where when you zoom out and you look at other, I mean, let's be honest, none of these things are real bear cycles. When we look at the human history and the economics of human history, when we really zoom out, we have been in a 40 to 50 year bull cycle. It has been up only for multiple generations in the United States economy and most Western economies, and that is a fact. There have been setbacks in the 80s. There have been setbacks in 2008. There have been setbacks, obviously, in 2011 and other windows of receding in modern economies. But you look at the actual charts, it has been up only with investments. Anything you bought, from gold to stocks to speculative assets, it's been up only for the last 40, 50 years because of, and we believe this lie of modern monetary theory that money printing can literally last forever with healthy amounts of inflation, 2-3% a year. All of that has been thrown out the window over the last couple of years. We've been hyper-printing, hyperinflating the money. The actual inflation, the Fed is saying that it's like 7-8-9% inflation month to month, like increase since last year's price points, right? But the actual consumer price index, as far as what people are feeling in their gasoline prices, their grocery bills, their rent, it's closer to 15-20% currently in current inflation rate. So this thing is out of control. And truly, the party's not going to last forever. 40, 50 years of up only. We're not due for a 1-year bear market. We're not due for a 6-month bear market. We're not due for a 5-year bear market. I think that we're due multi-year bear market. Maybe modern economics and modern technology can pull us out of a multi-year bear, but I don't think it's going to be a 6-month thing. I think it's going to take a lot of zooming out. We can try to make contrasts, and a lot of the charting guys try to draw lines and make contrasts between the bear cycle of 2017, 18 after Bitcoin and other cryptos bounce off their highs at the time. But the reality of the matter is that the market was still in a mega bull cycle. It was in the middle of a mega bull cycle at the time, 2016, 17, 18. Even though crypto was drawing back, everyone and their mother was still making money. Everyone's retirement funds were going up. Everyone's savings accounts were going up. Everyone was buying their dream cars. The economy was good. And that is not the current conditions that we're in. And again, 40, 50 years of up only is not sustainable. So I think that if we are entering the real bear, I think it's going to be a multi-year bear.
It's got to be. Sounds like we're due for it. And even if you zoom out, like you were saying, even if you zoom out on just NFT transactions and daily volume, a year ago, I mean, we're still up from that point about a year ago, I would imagine. Because we're pulling 20 to 25, maybe 35 million a day. I think a year ago we were only doing like 1 to 2, like really not even close. So if you do zoom out in a year's sense, we're still up. Obviously, it's not 100 million a day, but I think you're right. Like, oftentimes these smaller retracements feel like the end of the world, but it's actually not if you zoom out a little bit. Maybe that's the optimist spin on this, but I do think we're due for what you were saying.
Yeah, man. I mean, people, it's funny to me that people with a straight face can actually talk as if the bubble has already popped and we've bottomed out, when there are like virtual sneakers. These Nike Artifact shoes are 1.4 ETH. They're $3,000, like $3,000 for these things. The idea that the bubble has not, that we've completely bottomed out and that this is max pain, that's a joke. I mean, I believe that if we see max pain in this cycle, it's going to be people literally scrambling to sell their mutants for 3 ETH, literally.
Yeah. And all of this to say, be and stay ready for that, because you don't really know when that could happen. It could happen in the blink of an eye. I mean, exactly. If everybody knew when this would happen, no one would even be holding these things, right? So people can make money speculatively in markets like these, and I think we all have been able to. But it's not to say that the music, people like to say, oh, when the music stops, everyone's screwed. I think they're kind of right, though. I mean, we've seen that happen.
Warren Buffett famously said, "Buy when there's blood in the streets." That is the buy. That is the buy.
Yeah, and we haven't really seen that. I know for a few weeks on Twitter, people were, bemoaning the fact that they couldn't sell their NFTs. ETH was going down. It's a bear market. People were kind of making those types of posts from some of our favorite influencers and stuff. And then things have kind of been silent, or people were a little bit too hopeful about the bull market returning after a few weeks. And it's like, guys, I think you're kind of missing the bigger picture here.
Totally agree. It reminds me of that meme we were talking about earlier today with the Wojak in front of the computer. Charts all red candle, red candle, red candle, and then a little bit of green up 1%, and his reaction with the O face is like, oh, in front of the computer. Super excited, but I really do feel like that's kind of where the market's at. People are looking for exit liquidity. There's a lot of hopium right now. Obviously, people that saw life-changing gains and life-changing unrealized gains, especially, they're desperate to see those numbers again on the screen.
Totally. Well, I know I'll stay ready for this, for these types of events, and I would encourage anyone listening to do the same because, like Garrett was saying, generational wealth opportunities are presented in bear markets. So while we can make money in the bull and the bear, I like to think I can do both. I think the real money is to be made, in the next few months to a year when we can be buying some assets way lower than anyone thought they could go.
And I'm no bear market veteran, but from everything I've heard, patience during the bear. Like you might be holding that for 6 months or a year, but if you truly believe that emerging out on the other side, that CryptoPunk could be back at 100, 500 ETH floor, just holding it and patience and perseverance through a bear market, because it's going to be tempting to sell. Everything's going to be probably trading sideways and bleeding for a very long time.
Totally. Yeah, I think the key I've noticed in these bear markets when things are just moving sideways, everyone's just so bored. There's no fun to be had. There's nothing going on, and that's almost a signal to me like, oh, I think we're going lower, because if people kind of lose interest in this, they might just sell out, and that's really when it's like, okay, I think we can. That's why I've kind of been feeling like this over the past few weeks. Is people are kind of maybe losing some interest in some of their NFTs, or they're looking at their wallet and thinking like, wow, I have 100 ETH worth of value here. I don't really know what ETH is going to do over the next 6 months. Maybe I should start looking at pulling some of this out. And luckily enough for them right now, there are buyers, but in 6 months, maybe there aren't as many. So staying ready for situations like that.
Big parts of this are the social elements to the NFT ecosystem, right? So when the engagement's down on Twitter and people aren't getting like the crazy dopamine hits from their new profile pic tweets or their, whatever it is, they're just shit posts. And like when engagement's down and morale is down, like it's just less exciting to be holding these NFTs and these tokens, frankly. And it's not good. This stuff is compounding.
Totally. Well,
it's always very important. I know we say this all the time, but make sure you never put in more than you can afford to lose.
Absolutely.
And it is so important, because if you do that, let's say you can afford to lose a CryptoPunk worth in value, right? If you can hold that, like Garrett was saying, that could be life-changing money. And that was, through the process of the blood market and, downtrending for however long it might take. If you don't put in too much, or at least relative to what you can afford, what's that to you? Depending on who you are, I guess.
Yeah, never overextend. We've been saying that, especially to members for a long time. Just making sure people kind of temper their expectations. Seeing people hit like 10 or 100 X's on NFTs, I think those days might be behind us, at least for the short term. So yeah, making sure, if you're looking at your wallet and realizing like, oh gosh, I have, maybe all this money in these things isn't best used, holding them right now. Maybe trim a little risk. I think that's always a good strategy, and it's one I've been trying to do as well.
Yeah, it takes the fun out of it when you're just super stressed and you're over leveraged.
Yeah, for sure. Well, speaking of fun, I had a bunch talking to you about this. Thank you so much for your time, Garrett.
Yeah, man, definitely appreciate you guys having me on, and it was fun to get into some of this stuff. Hope to do it again soon.
Cool. Well, at Bearish with 2 underscores at the end on Twitter. Check him out. Yeah.
Verified check coming soon. And once I get that, both underscores are getting knocked off. I'm just going to get at Bearish.
Let's go.
Cool. Thanks again, guys.